ISPI Montreal's 2016 event series is being designed to explore how to build thriving cultures by embracing best-in-class performance improvement theories and practices. Today's webinar, entitled Global Perspectives on Performance Improvement, which is hosted by Ria Roy, comes to you from ISPI International, and we are so glad you can be with us today. Next Wednesday evening, we are following up on this webinar with a live panel discussion to hear from experts in the field on how these global concepts are showing up right here in Montreal's organizations. If you haven't already booked your seat for next week, I strongly urge you to do so at the end of this webinar. Spaces are limited, and I don't want you to miss out on the fantastic opportunity that this event is going to provide for having a conversation that promises to be full of golden nuggets that you're going to be able to take with you and leverage the very next day. So now it is with great pleasure that I take a few seconds of your time to introduce you to your host, Ria Roy. Ria is the creator of ISPI's column entitled Performance Express, where she shares her knowledge on rethinking, revisiting, and reimagining performance improvement. Ria is currently a doctoral candidate in instructional technology at India University, Bloomington, with a minor in business and an emphasis on strategy. As though that were not enough, she also holds an MBA in management from Management Information Systems, an MS in Human Factors and Information Design, and an MS in Training and Development. She is truly an amazing person, and we are really lucky to have her hosting this webinar today. So Ria, over to you.
Thank you, Corey, but I think you may have exaggerated a tad bit, and I'm not too sure if I'm truly wonderful. But anyway, without further ado, as they say, let's get started. I want to kind of start by understanding what your expectations are today from this webinar. So if you could type in your responses and give me a sense of what you're expecting from this webinar that we've titled The Global Perspectives of Performance Improvement. Okay. I'll try my best to do that, Eve. Ooh. Okay. Yes, we will be addressing the 10 principles of performance improvement. We're calling them the standards. I'd like to hear what is happening outside of Montreal. Okay. Julie, we will be learning about performance improvement in general. Ravinder, you need to tell, or Kumar, you need to tell me if we've met your expectation of aligning the needs and objectives and getting desired performance results. I believe so. Nikki, I apologize, but we won't be talking about evaluating results today. There are 10 standards, and we will be focusing on the first two standards, and evaluation of results is the stuff that we won't be covering. But I guess, Davina, this is something that we could pencil, and maybe we could schedule another webinar where we discuss evaluation of results. And I wanted to address Ellie here, who says that you're in the field of workforce development in the area of international development. I need to know how these two can be integrated. Ellie, these are great conversations that I can have with you offline. I am not familiar with the field of international development, the minutiae of international development. Maybe what I could do is give you certain perspectives or ways of thinking, frameworks, and the integration may have to be done by you at your end. Um, I hope I'd love to hear from you next time if we've been able to address at least part of your expectations. Without the global perspectives of performance improvement is a huge field, and we'll be divvying up the presentation today into two sections. In the first section, we'll try and discuss the fundamentals of performance improvement, and then we'll have a quick Q&A session to discuss, if you have any Q&A around the fundamentals of performance improvement. And then what we'll do is we'll shift gears and launch ourselves into understanding the global perspectives of performance improvement, and then we'll have another quick session, a Q&A session around the global perspectives. And to one of the participants' points, we are trying to do this with as many examples so that you can transfer it to your role. And just a quick FYI that this session is also being recorded. Okay, so I want to start off with giving you a rationale for this presentation. And this is a presentation that has been put together by the International Society of Performance Improvement. And the first section of the presentation today is called The Fundamentals of Performance Improvement. And this is an overview for how we think. And how we think is by using a systems approach, what we do, and this is where the standards kicks in and where we work. As you know, some of us tend to work with organizations, some of us work with individuals, some of us work with teams, and some of us use an integrated approach. So irrespective of where you're coming from, whether you're from a profit organization or not for profit, or the armed forces, whether you're an academic or a practitioner, you will agree that performance improvement is anything but simple. It is extremely complex and it is evolving continuously. So as we go through this webinar, what I'd like you to do, or I'd like to request, is that you bear in mind that this is simply one perspective that is being offered by the International Society for Performance Improvement on how to improve performance, and that there are a whole bunch of other perspectives. There's a plethora of various approaches as you study and belong to other fields, functions, and so on. So what that means is whether you're a marketing person, an instructional design person, an OD person, you all have models, frameworks, ways of thinking, perspectives on how to improve performance. Whereas what the field of performance improvement, or HPT, does is that it tries to cut across all the functions and gives you a way of thinking about it in a far more, shall we say, a solution neutral perspective. So with that in mind, let's kick off this presentation for today. Performance improvement has been described as the systematic and systemic identification and removal of barriers to individual and organizational performance. So by the end of this presentation, the goal is that we help you recognize the 10 standards of performance improvement, recognize what the 4 levels of performance are, recognize how inputs and processes influence results in a performance system, and to be able to identify the drivers that enable or inhibit performance and results. I have also been told that you've been given handouts and they include...
Sorry,
Yes?
Ria, sorry to interrupt. This is Davina. I'm getting a couple of comments that people can't hear. So just, I can hear Ria perfectly. If you're having any difficulty, just send me a private message and we'll try to work on it. But if I don't get too many, then I'm going to assume that it's on the end, on your side, not our side. But let me know and keep me updated. Thanks so much, and sorry for interrupting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go on with the presentation. If there are issues, there's a recording, and I will make myself available to you to address any of the sections that I've missed out on. So we are on the learning objectives of our webinar today. And I've also been told that you've been given handouts. And the handouts are on the performance improvement, standard handouts, and a presentation handout. So let's start off with the 10 standards. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and if you could just read through the standards, just eyeball it for a few seconds, and then I'll kind of launch into what we have to say about the standards. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've had a chance to kind of eyeball some of these standards. ISPI has put forth 10 standards for performance improvement. These standards, 1 through 10, are in the order of the basic process, followed by performance improvement professionals. And in today's presentation, we will be focusing on the first two standards, which is focusing on the results or outcomes and taking a systemic view. And Nikki, your request for evaluation is standard 7, and which is why evaluation is beyond the scope of the presentation that we are doing today. How did these standards come about in place? A team of over 30 performance improvement practitioners have developed these standards as a code of performance for performance improvement. By the way, I am in the habit of calling performance improvement as PI. So if any time during the rest of the webinar you hear PI, I am referring to performance improvement. ISPI, that's another acronym that will be used throughout. ISPI is International Society of Performance Improvement, the little logo that you see on the left side of the PowerPoint slide. So ISPI wanted to differentiate performance improvement from other disciplines and to guide practitioners in its use. And so this kind of ties back to this request that came in from this person who was in workforce development and wanted to integrate it with her domain. So see if this serves as a guideline and a framework to help you integrate it to workforce development. The 10 standards of performance improvement are the standards for the field. It forms a basis for what we know works in the field of performance improvement, and it also serves as the guide for how effective performance improvement professionals conduct their work. So how did these standards come into place? It was the work was done by a bunch of doctoral students at Indiana University in Bloomington campus. We did a practice analysis by reviewing articles in professional journals where practitioners described what they did. It was then reviewed by an independent team of experts, and the team of experts included consultants, practitioners, academics, and so on. And it was available for public review and comment on ISPI and ATD's website. As of 2012, I believe that there was a validation that was done, and the validation was done by involved 700 professionals across 24 countries. And what you're seeing today is the list of validated results from 2012. All of this was done under the guidance and leadership of Dr. Judy Hale. Now, the first four, I'd like to draw your attention to the first four, that we kind of have a little mnemonic called RSVP. R stands for results, S stands for systems, V stands for value, and P stands for partnership. It's just a nifty way for us to remember the first four standards. So in any performance improvement project that is undertaken as a performance improvement professional, we want to ensure that RSVP, or the first four standards, are being embraced, are being adopted, is being implemented throughout your engagement, throughout your performance improvement engagement. Um, does that mean that standards 5 through 10 are invalid or not being done? In an ideal world, 5 through 10 needs to happen as well. But say, for instance, number 10, impact analysis. In the real world, realistically speaking, impact analysis may not happen. Why? It's generally a very time consuming process. Organizations may not want to engage in an impact analysis. You will see an impact analysis typically being undertaken by governmental organization. And when you think about impact analysis, you're asking yourself questions such as what's the risk involved, what's the money, the political environment, so on and so forth. Now, for those of you who's interested for more information on the standards of performance improvement outside of your handout, I'd recommend that you go to the CPT certification on ISPI website. So now we're going to start off with the first standard, which is focus on results. And in this case, when we focus on results, we want to start with the end in mind. We don't want to start with problems. We don't want to start with opportunities or methods, but with the goal. So then, when you're thinking like that, one must also raise questions such as what result must the organization achieve? What are my organization's strategic goals? So when you ask these questions, what results must my organization achieve? What are my organization's strategic goals? Are there things that come to mind? And could you type in your responses? What are some of the things that come to mind? What result must my organization achieve? And what are my organization's strategic goals? Increase ROI. Yes, Rosa. Something measurable. It needs to be more specific. Aligning leaders. Yes, I agree. Reduce risk. Reduce loss. Production capacity. Making people employable. Successful change. Okay, so these are some really good examples, and we can go on we can go on with these responses. And again, some of the other examples in response to these questions could also be increase market share, reduce time to market new goods and services, reduce staffing costs, reduction in cycle time if you're in the manufacturing world, reduction of costs, so on and so forth. So while we are in this mindset, the next question that we also need to ask is what should be different when we finish doing what is needed? What should be different when we finish doing what is needed, and how will we know we've achieved the result? So I am going to now move on to my next discussion, and we'll kind of focus a little bit on results. So what are results? ISPI suggests that results are work accomplishments or completed work. It is a result that is valued by the receiver of that work. And results are also work outputs that meet the customer or organizational needs. So let's take an example of a chef in a fine dining restaurant. And because we have audiences from different parts of US and Canada, I won't take a specific example, but just think of a fine dining restaurant in your area. And let's say that the business goal of that restaurant is to grow their business by providing an excellent dining experience. Now, if the chef and restaurant are phenomenal, then the diner, which is you, the customer, values the meal and experience for the price paid, right? But if the result for the chef and the restaurant is repeat business and new customers, because then people start talking about great experiences. But what if the restaurant staff is phenomenal, but the chef is inconsistent and the food is less than excellent? Will you go back to it? The restaurant will not meet its business goal because of the services that is fluctuating. So in a fine dining restaurant, the value is in the quality of the food and the experience. Now I throw another question your way. And if you could tell me what if the example was a fast food restaurant? Yes, Rosa, maybe we'll get a discount, right? But what if I want to kind of get your sense? What if the example was a fast food restaurant? What would its customers value? So, in a fast food restaurant, what would you value? In a fast food restaurant, we're talking quality, time spent, quick delivery. Yes, I agree, Sarah. It's an interesting question because food quality is indeed difficult to measure objectively. I was wondering, cost, yes. Okay, so as you can see that some of the values that a customer puts towards a fine dining restaurant and the expectations and the value expectations towards a fast food restaurant is a little different. I'm going to try. Sarah brings up a good point. It is indeed complex and the lines are blurring, but we'll try to keep them discrete and independent. But so let's say that the values are a little different. But as you can see in both the instances within the same industry, which is the food industry, within the food industry, the results are positive. Fine diners and fast food customers both receive what they value. Or, as we were discussing, when the chef is not up to par, the results can also be negative. Either way, the results are impacted by the performance of a person or an organization. So, I've been talking about performance for a bit. So, what is performance? The way ISPI looks at performance, performance is activity plus results. So let me kind of elaborate a little bit what we mean by this. Answering a phone, for example, is only an activity. Answering a call and resolving a customer problem is performance. Making a sales call is once again an activity. But making a sales call and getting an appointment with a decision maker is called performance. Another example would be training accounts receivable staff is an activity. Training accounts receivable staff so that the billing is error free and on time is performance. The term performance is often misunderstood because people tend to use the words behavior or activity to mean performance. But in the world of ISPI and the way we see performance improvement, performance is both behavior or activity and results. So, activity without results, to belabor the point, activity without results is just activity. So think about one activity that you regularly do at home or school or work. What results do you achieve? And if you could please type in your responses in the chat box. Hmm. You guys have decided to give me a hard time, isn't it? I rarely get to see the impact of the work I do. This is very interesting. Applying for a job position activity. Rosa, can we think about how we can convert that into performance? And the same goes to you, Sarah. Getting the job position, accomplishment. Um, hmm. There could be various phases. Take a dance lesson and take a dance class and dance correctly. Advise and see behavior changes. A tasty home cooked meal. Hmm. Help a client train their dog. Okay, these are all. Matt, walk the dog. No comment. That's an activity. Could we turn that into a performance? Creating an e-learning lesson. Allison, would that just be an activity? Can you convert that into a less performance? Perhaps. Okay, I'm going to kind of start with Allison. You're going to create an e-learning lesson. Is the e-learning lesson for you an activity or is it a performance? And how can you create that? How can we make that into a performance? It's an activity, Allison. That's correct. So, how would we create your e learning lesson that is performance centric? Okay, so according to Mariam, it's uploading the course. Excellent, Allison. It would need to meet the business goals. So, stakeholders meet the learning objectives. Fantastic. Increase in the enrollment after intervention. Great. So now um, I'm going to assume from your responses that you are beginning to differentiate, or you clearly did know the difference between activity and performance. But keep in mind that whenever we're talking about performance, it's always the inclusion of performance. It's always the inclusion of a result. So it's behavior, activity, plus result, which includes performance. The other way to think about it, and this is like um, um, a quick way to think about it, activities are usually verbs and results are nouns. So an example would be training is an activity, but what does training result into? And that would be performance. And that would be the result. Um, so I want to now, as we kind of move to the next slide, we're going to be talking about the 4 levels of performance. Um, as an individual, you are working within an environment that affects your performance. Performance improvement considers the environment and the performer. And so, with that perspective, there are 4 levels of performance. And so, most of your examples, the ones that I've eyeballed, stemmed from the worker level, and that's the first level. And then we go up to work, workplace, and world. So I'm going to start with the first level, the worker level. Organizations often try to improve performance at the worker level, assuming that if employees did everything right, results would improve. But then, as you can see, that there are 3 other levels of performance, and any one of them can drive or impede results. And you always have to look at all 4 levels of performance. I started off this webinar today by saying that performance is extremely complex and evolving. And this is where the complexity kicks in. So each of the levels that contribute to performance or that impede performance is not independent or discrete, but there could be levels that work with each other towards performance deterrent. So you could have worker, work, and workplace gaps that contribute to a gap in performance. So please keep that in mind. So at the worker level, let's start now with the first level, the worker level. The skills, the motivation, and actions of individuals and teams. As in our example of a restaurant, it's the waiter, the head chef, and the team of chefs. So we could be talking about the skills, motivations, and actions of each of these individuals and teams of workers. It is not the job title of the workers, but how the workers do their job, whether they provide services, make products, or provide support. Um, so, what are some examples at the worker level based in the organization that you're at? Ravinder, you're correct. There are more to individual personality traits at the worker level, and there are more to the worker level. There are a couple of other elements. Excellent motivation, lack of experience, ability, skills. Great. These are some great responses. Motivation and access. Fantastic. Okay, so most of the efforts and performance improvement have been at this level. Organizations often try to fix how workers do their jobs, failing to consider how work design, information, and resources the workers have to struggle with influences how they do their jobs. So I'm going to go up to the next level, and Ravinder is way ahead of me, and he pointed out that work level it often involves the design of work tasks and processes. So let's think about a factory floor, and a factory floor is often designed in a way that is crucial to making products efficiently and in a cost-effective manner. So think when I think of a factory floor, I'm thinking of cars being manufactured. Um, And so, this discussion about tasks, about processes, also gets a little bit complex when we start talking about cross functional processes. And so, processes, once again, is not really neat and discrete. It can become messy at times. And when we are talking about cross functional processes, try and think about a pharmaceutical company, and if you're familiar with the way a pharmaceutical company operates, it's often cross-functional processes are often product testing, setting up a phase of clinical two trials. Those are some of the examples, and these processes require tasks that need to be completed by various individuals from various departments in harmony. And so, are there other examples that you can think of at the work level that come to mind? Hala, you may have to expand on resources. Corey, there's a good book, and maybe just remind me, and I'll give you the name of that book. It could help you. Tasks. Okay, I'm talking about, you need to elaborate. Tasks are at all levels. What are examples of work level processes? Mm, Elizabeth, could you make sure that your example is sent to the entire audience? I quite like your example. Doing your timesheet, Matt, I want to, the way I see it, it's more at the worker level. Doing your timesheet, it could become a work level activity if you're say in HR, in human resources, and there's something that needs to be done for a team. Um, Okay, I think uh, we will be discussing processes a little later, and uh, this would tie in back to the work level processes that we are doing. Production process versus excellent, Joanne. I hope I haven't butchered your name. Production process versus executive process. Excellent. Um, uh, Duties and tasks as a teacher can be relegated to the worker level. We want to bump it up to the next level. Now, the way to think about this particular slide is that we are going from the micro to the macro, the macro being the world, or to the mega being the world. So micro, the lowest level, the singular most level is the worker, and then we are bumping up. The work could be your team, your department, your functional group. The workplace is the entire organization, and the world is the world. So I'm going to kind of shift gears, and now I'm going to talk about the workplace level. I'm going to talk about the third level, and bear in mind, standardization of procedures, Hala, it kind of depends. Yeah, it could be standardization of, if you're a policy and a procedural team, for instance, right, that governs all the procedures of an organization, and the workflow kind of comes into that department, then standardization of procedures is an apt example for that level. But in many organizations, bear in mind that standardization of procedures can kind of also become very role centric. So all lean analysts have to have standard procedures. Okay, and it could be in the department of supply chain management. So things can get very tricky, so you always have to see how many stakeholders are involved, and you've got to shift your perspective to look at from various angles. I hope I've made sense, but I'm kind of quickly going to go up to the next level, the third level. The workplace level often deals with the design of the organization, its governance, policies, strategies, and culture, all of which can promote or impede performance. And some of the examples that we have at this level is an organization such as Google or Apple that depends on policies and a culture at the workplace level that encourages activity and experimentation. What I want you to take away from here is that policies and cultural practice have a huge impact on motivation, ability to actually perform tasks, innovation, and agility. Exhorting employees will do nothing to change this. And now I'm going to go up another level. That's the world's level. Okay, so the workplace had to deal with the design of an organization. Now the world's level is the mega, the macro of the macro. The macro in this context would be the organization, and so the macro of the macro, which is the mega, the world. Exactly, it's the societal impact. So at the world level, we're talking about the business environment, we're talking about regulation, we are also talking about societal expectations that can also have a big impact on organizational performance. I think it is important to say here that world level factors are those that organizations do not control. World level factors in this perspective of performance improvement by ISPI suggests that organizations do not control but must pay attention to and plan for. So each time there is a new federal regulation governing any industry, organizations must make adjustments to their business processes and work tasks to be compliant. World level factors impact the worker, work, and workplace. Issues include the economy, changing industry regulations, public reactions to the organization's impact on the environment, and on local and distant communities. So, when we are talking about the organization's impact on the environment and on local and distant communities, some of the examples are, say, the water crisis in the US, Flint, Michigan, for example. There's another issue in Los Angeles happening right now, and that's the methane gas escaping from the wells in Los Angeles. And it'll take about 2 months for the wells to be covered. And so this is where we start asking questions about the impact of the organization on the environment and its people. Another example in South America, pregnant women bitten by mosquitoes have given birth to babies with deformities. And guess what? The vaccine is fairly easy to make, to manufacture, but was not lucrative for the drug companies to manufacture those vaccines. And so, as of today, or as of a few months ago, there have been 4,000 such cases. But vaccines are now being made. So there is a pro to looking at this, that the vaccines that they've arrested, that vaccines are now being made and the cases are being arrested at 4,000. But then the flip side is you also need to question, why did it get to 4,000 cases of children born with deformities? So these are the questions that we need to be thinking and asking and raising all the time. So what I want to ask you to think about is, what organizations can you think of any organizations that are known for paying attention to the world level? And what do they do that demonstrates it to you? Can you think of an organization that focuses at the world level? Red Cross, great. Can you think of Joanne, I want to push this exercise for you. No, I don't want you guys thinking about, I want to make it a little more difficult. Try to stay away from nonprofit organizations. They're the easiest ones to think about. I want you to start thinking about for-profit organizations. Think about organizations. Google, Mariam, could you elaborate on the example? What are they doing that pay attention to the world level? Apple, be specific. What are they doing that's focusing at the world level? Uber, Mac. Can you give me specific examples? What are they doing? Don't give me just the name of the organizations. Tell me, what are they doing excellent. So they're battling regulation on taxis. Who's funding HIV research? Yasmin? Mac. Okay, so Mac is funding HIV research. What else? Come on, what else? You guys gave me some really good examples. I want to go back to Apple makes iPhones, and is making money by. Okay, but Ellie, I want to focus on your example just a tad bit. Apple making iPhones and is making money by connecting people is kind of one of their core processes. It's like telling people. It's like saying that restaurants are feeding people. The Apple, what they did was a couple of years ago, and I don't remember when, but they changed the components in their iPhones, so that they're now, some of the components in their iPhone, in the iPhone, is biodegradable, so that now they're becoming environmental friendly. So you always have to think about the impact that they are having on the ecosystem, on the people, on the community, on the environment. um yeah, but when you think about pharmaceuticals and health outcome based pricing, is it the entire pharmaceutical company, or do you have specific organizations that are taking the charge? Body Shop, no animals testing. Perfect. Yes. So you Okay, so Starbucks is another organization known for patronizing fair market coffee, sustainable farming processes, recyclable products. I hope you're getting the kind of perspective that we need to embrace when we start looking at the world level, which is the mega level, the macro of the macro. Perfect. GSK, Keurig, yes, excellent examples. And now let's flip it. And I'm going to ask you, can you think of organizations that have gotten into serious trouble for not paying attention? at the world level. And what did they do? So we just looked at some excellent examples put forth by you guys. Shell, again, give me an example. What did they do wrong, Ellie? And how did they get into serious trouble? Excellent. Joe Fresh. Thank you, Matt. That's a fantastic example. FIFA, what did FIFA do? Um, I think I'm going to butcher your name, Guillaume, but ISPI are developing a PI expertise worldwide with standards. Um, um, I guess would not be an organization that got into serious trouble, would it? I'm guessing you're still on the first question, paying attention at the world level. Um, Home Depot, excellent. Employees volunteering for low income housing. Cruise lines oil spill, fantastic. Mm, okay, employees volunteering for low income housing would again be an example of something that was done right by an organization. I'm flipping it and I want to see what people are doing wrong, what organizations are doing wrong right now. Corey, another great example. Excellent, Ellie. Could you just remind us which organization? Because I got into trouble. Shell. Okay, great. Another example would be Fukushima power plant for both their preparation and for handling of the tsunami not too long ago, and Enron for manipulating the market to improve profits while damaging the economies of other states, falsifying financial reporting, financially destroying their own employees, and bringing down a large accounting firm. These are all examples of what can happen at the world level and the impact, the devastating impact that can happen at the world level. So, what I'm going to do is now kind of shift gear, go on to the next slide, which is we're going to can this activity. We're not going to do this in the interest of time, but what I'd like all of you to do is think about have make this your homework assignment. Think about the organization where you work. What are the examples of each performance level at the um, workplace world level, and think about activity and results at each of these levels. Um, what we'll do is now we will go on to the performance system, and we will quickly, and this is now we're coming on to the second standard. It's called taking a systemic view. And ISPI thinks that one of the ways to do it is by using a tool called the performance system. And this is what a performance system looks like. So why do we need to look at a system? If you look at a performance problem, the performance problem of an organization, irrespective of the levels it is at, resides in a system. And for us to resolve the performance problem, we need to understand the system it resides in and get an understanding of the system to help us with our diagnostic. So what I'm going to do is, this is where it gets a little heavy, but it's a very, very simple model. It's an input process output model. Okay, and there are a couple of other things that have been thrown in. So I'm going to talk here for a bit. So in the next slide, I'm going to start off with the end in mind. In performance improvement, we are always looking at the end in mind. Okay, and when you're analyzing a performance system, you always want to start with the receiving system. And what, in a very simplistic definition, very simplistic definition of a system, is to have feedback. So what is a receiving system? It is a receiving system is something that drives everything else. A receiving system is nothing but your stakeholders. It is called so because they receive your products and services. If you're working in a government organization, the people who work for the organization as well as the community become the shareholders and they become the receiving system. In the case of organizations that produce products and services, it is fairly easy to decipher who the receivers are. A quick differentiation between output and results. Outputs are individual products, services, sub-assemblies, and other items that are produced by the work that will lead to results. Out of the process comes some sort of an output. So, for instance, your organization manufactures widgets. Okay, the widget is your output. But now, when the widget results into sales or and meets the organization's bottom line, whether it is a singular bottom line or whether it's a triple bottom line, it is a result for the organization. Now, if it's appreciated by the customers who are buying the widget, then your receiving system is good. Now, what are processes? When we discussed I'm jumping the gun here. Sorry. I'm going to pull up the slide again. I mentioned processes, and I did mention that we're going to talk about processes a little more in detail a little later. Processes are nothing but your methods, your work streams, and sequence of operations that we also refer to as the work level. Remember the 4 W's? So typically, I'm generalizing this. Typically, processes are 3 types. You have core processes, you have support processes, and then you have management processes. So in the example of the widget that I just gave you, to differentiate between output and results, your core process in the organization that manufactures widgets, the core process is producing widgets. But then you also have a support process, which is finance, HR, IT. And then you also have a management process, which includes performance feedback system, strategy, and so on. What you need to remember is, irrespective of the processes that exist in your organization, all of them have to be aligned for the output and ultimately the results. Okay. And just a quick side note that your sub processes can also be a sub process for the management process. I am going to stop. Processes can get the discussion on processes. We can have a whole new webinar just on processes. So I'm going to stop myself here. And then I'm going to look at inputs. Inputs is something that you're all familiar with. It is the resources such as man, machine, materials, money. Inputs can be information, inputs can be your goals, so on and so forth. And then you look at conditions or business environment that impact your results. What I want to alert you here is that you guys know what conditions are, what business environmental conditions are. They include government laws and regulations, trends in the economy, market forces such as competition, cost of funds, suppliers, the list, you know it, you have it all. What I want you to know is that in this case, you don't do a backward thinking. This is a supra system. Okay, so this analysis is done separately. You have to keep this analysis of understanding your business environment separate from how your inputs, process, output, results influence your receivers. And then there are 2 more components in the performance system, and that's the performance feedback and the value feedback. Now I'm going to go back, and if you see that the value feedback is almost external, it is external. It's not almost external. It is external, and it's coming from your receiving system. So these are words or behaviors from stakeholders showing how much they value the results the organization is producing. If you piss these guys off, you're not going to meet your results. Okay, so you may have outputs, but results end happening. So increased sales or many customers leaving is a form of feedback, and it's a form of value feedback. Feedback often comes from outside the organization and is best used to accelerate, revise your strategy, policy, and long range planning. And then the other form of feedback is the performance feedback. And as you see, it's kind of internal, it's within the organization. And this is information that is generated during work processes such as quality control and how work units interact with each other. So they typically manifest in the form of complaints. Most performance feedback comes from inside the organization. And once again, it should be used to revise your work design, your procedures, processes, and adjust the resources. Okay, so I don't know if you have your McDonald's video up and running. If you do, we'll be listening to that video for about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Or I will also try and play this video. Is everyone okay, so we're going to only watch 2 minutes and 20 seconds of it. I hope you can hear this video. Let us know if you can't.
My name is Brianna Park, and I'm 17 years old, and I go to Hamilton Fraser High School, and I'm here to trial as a McDonald's crew member.
McDonald's is one of New Zealand's biggest employers with more than 150 restaurants and more than 9,000 staff.
Hey, I'm Brianna.
Hi, I'm Oliver. Oliver Henry is a shift supervisor here at McDonald's Frankfurt, and he's going to be showing Brianna the ropes.
For health and safety reasons, we just need to wash our hands first.
How do you turn it on?
Just down here with your foot.
New crew members are introduced to food safety, assembling.
Hi, Ria. This is Javina. I'm just going to jump in. The video isn't too clear for me. I don't know about everyone else, but there's also the link of the video in the chat. And remember, it's a 7-minute video. Just watch the first 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, did everyone get that? I'm sorry, I was just informed that the video is not working. Can the rest of you, I was also playing the video. Were you able to see the video? Okay, great. Thank you, Joanne, for that confirmation. I was told that the video, okay, great, Roman. Thank you so much. Try using this link. It's a 7-minute odd, few seconds long video. Please, if you're not seeing the video with me, run it on your browser and go for 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Ravinder, please bear with us.
Food, serving customers, and packing food orders.
Bit of a trick to get them on. Pull the fingers out.
Oh my god, it's not working.
Once she's got a handle on the gloves, Brianna gets a demonstration from the master burger builder. And now, it's Brianna's turn.
So that way?
Yep.
And that way?
Cool, and just grab out a wrap. Yeah. With the mustard, you just hit the top, and then with the ketchup, just grab out the mustard.
Yeah.
Just hit the top on the center. Yeah. Oh, this. Yep. Cool. And then just pull that out and squeeze it. On the center. Yep. And just a dash of some onions. Just a dash. And then one pickle. Just in the center. And then one slice of cheese.
Yeah.
Yep, and then just grab the tongs and then one kilo. Yep, that one.
Oopsie daisies, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. Okay.
And then just put it in the center and just fold it over.
Okay.
Fold it again. And then underneath. Yep, cool, and then slide it down. Oh,
I see.
well done. Easy?
No.
No, not easy. I thought it was pretty smooth.
Okay.
But let's move on to the fries now.
Yeah.
When I just first started, I just had some money. But now I think it's a really good opportunity and a good career. Just shake it up. Cool. Perfect.
I apologize if you've been having issues with the video, but what we just saw, for those of you, the video worked fine. It was a 2-minute, 20-second McDonald's training video of how to put a burger. So once again, let's look at the performance system. Can you tell me what are some of the examples of the inputs that were used in this video? The process would be different, Ravinder. We are now focusing on the inputs that were used in this video. Yes, Joanne. So could you please expand on the raw material, bread, condiments? Exactly, Eve. Yes. So to Eve's point, and I apologize if once again, I'm mispronouncing your name. Gloves, yes. Excellent. Fries, tools. Okay. Great example. Okay, now let's move on very quickly to the next element in the performance system, and let's look at processes. Could you tell me what are some of the processes that you noticed in the video? Exactly, Bahar. Excellent. Wash hands, put gloves on. Excellent. How to assemble the burger. Perfect. Folding the paper. Okay, some great examples. You guys all have it. And could you tell me what were some of the outputs? Order of processes. Fantastic, Paul. This is an excellent point. This is a little macro overview of all the processes that exist. Could you tell me what were the outputs? Mariam, sandwich, service. You might want to elaborate on the service. Fries. Okay. Feedback. Okay, very good. Feedback from the trainer. And a couple of other examples of outputs would be, in this case, also uniform burgers and ununiform burgers, right? Those were another things that we saw from the video. So what you can do, I want to kind of break this here. So you see the various elements in the performance system. You have a brief overview of how they interact and what you should be looking for. What you can do is take this performance system, take this graphic, and you can go through this process of thinking and asking questions about each element within the performance system. You could do it for the McDonald's video, or you could do it with your team within your organization. The other thing that you could do is you can raise other questions. So don't confine yourself just to understand what are the inputs, processes, value feedback within your organization. But you could also ask stuff like, if you were the customer, how would you like the hamburger the trainee made? From the perspective of the performance system, what should be considered for the worker? What should be considered for the work being done? What about the workplace? From the perspective of performance system, what should be considered for the workplace? So you see how you can now start asking more questions based on the various levels, which is the worker, workplace, and the world level. I now want to kind of get into this thing that we're going to call performance drivers. We have briefly touched upon the concept of a system. We've discussed that the goal of a system is to have feedback, and we've looked at the flow of the various elements in the performance system. What we now need to look at, what we're now going to discuss, are the things that drive performance within a system. So this is a model. It has 6 cells. On the top, you have information, resources, and incentives. At the bottom, you have skills, capability, and motives. And you see that line, the horizontal line that says external and internal. What that says is that stuff above the line is external to the worker, is external to the employee, is external to the individual. And stuff below the line is all internal to the worker, is internal to the employee, is internal to the individual. So the bottom row is what each worker brings to his or her performance, his or her internal or individual performance. And the top row is what organizations provide to support the success of each worker. So we could also ask, what did the in the McDonald's video that you just saw, you can ask the various performance drivers that are related to making hamburgers at McDonald's, and you can look at it externally and you can look at it internally to the worker. Okay, so I am. So we're going to skip the discussion around that question, and we're going to. So what is included under the information? It's goals and expectations, guidelines, and feedback that an organization provides to an employee, to the worker. The resources are materials, information, equipment, space and time, work design. And then incentives could be monetary or non-monetary, and it's often based on performance. Skills and knowledge. Most of us are kind of familiar with the various elements that fall into the skills and knowledge bucket. Then you also have capability. That's mental, physical, emotional ability to do the work. And then the motives, the desire and the willingness to do the work. So as you can see that there are many drivers that can contribute to the performance or that can impede performance. So one way to think about it is, if the trainee at McDonald's had the capability to do the work and the motivation, but not the materials, could she or he make the hamburger? Now let's flip it. If the trainee, if the employee had the information, the materials and capability, but not the skills and knowledge or the motivation, would you want to eat his or her burger? So what I want you to take away here is that each item in one cell impacts each of the elements in the other cells. So they kind of all interact and impact each other. If anything is missing from any of the 6 cells, then performance will be negatively affected. Understanding performance drivers is the key to improving performance. Once you have a clear understanding of what the drivers are for the worker level, you can then determine the gaps that can be filled to improve performance. Too often, and cell number 4, okay, which is the lack of skill and knowledge, is assumed to be where the performance deficiency lies. And it is always assumed, or more often than not, that training is the appropriate solution. So, according to a poll by Gallup, the number one reason why people do not perform on the job is because of lack of feedback and expectations. And the number 2 reason on that poll result was the lack of material. Studies have shown that it internal to the performer, performance deficiencies internal to the performer, which is below the horizontal line, is only 25% of the time, and stuff that contributes to deficiencies in performance, which is above the horizontal line, is about 75% of the time. Yet this tendency that we see of laying the blame on of the individual worker and then coming up with training design solutions, in psychology, in the field of psychology, it's called attributions failure number 1. So it is more prevalent than we would like to believe. And what I'd like you to take away from this slide is that more often than not, there are multiple factors that impact performance, and there are multiple factors that contribute to your performance, which is what makes the whole field of performance improvement that much more complex, that much more fascinating, and that much more multifaceted. A quick side note: this model was created by Dr. Thomas Gilbert, and those familiar with the field of human performance technology, also known as performance improvement, it is also called the behavioral engineering model, and it has been one of the cornerstones of our field. And it is to help us realize that performance isn't always about training and fixing the person. So as I've been saying, so one thing that you need to the other thing that you need to take away is that when we look at performance drivers, these are drivers that impact, contribute, deter performance at the worker level. But there are also ways to analyze performance at the workplace, and world level. and we will not be discussing how this model contributes to performance at the workplace and world level, but I just want you to kind of expose you, kind of whet your appetite that there is more about performance, and it's there's much more, and we are just at the second level, and we've only looked at how performance drivers impact the worker. um, the performance system is one way to understand the level, the performance system that we spoke about that included inputs, processes, and outputs. But this is another way to study performance at the workplace, and world level. This is a model that has been proposed by Gary Rumbler in his book called Improving Performance: How to Manage the White Space on the Organization Chart. And it looks at how to deal with work and workplace level issues. And Corey, I believe that you had mentioned a performance issue at the beginning, and this is a book that would help you. So, as you may have noticed, what was sadly missing from this presentation, that there were no canned solutions that were offered to you for any of your performance improvement concerns. And why did we do that? We have to go back to the start of the discussion that it is increasingly complex. Giving you a canned solution is being premature, is not being thorough. What we are trying to do as performance improvement professionals is trying to understand what are the performance actions, results, what the performance system is, what are the performance drivers. And the 10 standards, if you were to look at it again in your handout, provides us performance improvement professionals with guidance, and we kind of call it the North Star. And the various models are tools with which we do our work according to the standards. So this brings us to the end of the fundamentals of performance improvement. Are there any overarching questions or concerns? If you don't, I would like to kind of quickly jump into a very brief 101 on the global perspective on performance improvement. All of these discussions were just about the fundamentals of PI. Okay, Davina, I want to quickly check in with you because Ravinder here says that there have been questions. Are there any overarching questions that I need to? Are there any overarching questions that we need to discuss?
Apologies, I just sent you the expectations, and Ravender has some really interesting questions on the chat. Maybe we can unmute Ravender and you can ask them directly to you.
Where do you put political and policy issues in this model? Within your organization? They would become a part of your they would become a part of your process. It's things to consider while you're crafting your processes. And policy issues can also become a part of your feedback. So when you're crafting your performance, processes in your workplace, you're never going to do it in isolation or in vacuum from the political understanding of your organization. Everything that gets done, inputs, processes, performance feedback, output results, are always with an understanding of the various political issues. And policies are actually to define and outline your processes. And then if you were to look at the drivers, then you can look at goals and expect. Thank you, Yvonne. Eves can come from the top part of the grid. So you can look at politics and policies from the performance system perspective, or you can drill down to performance drivers. Okay, I just want to get a quick sense of whether you want to ask questions, or could I go into the next slide for the global perspectives? And do you want to kind of just get a quick sense of what we're talking about when we're trying to say a global perspective on performance improvement? Can I quickly go there and spend about maybe 15 minutes there? Okay, so we have one respondent who says go ahead. Do we have a vote from the others? Okay, perfect. Um, Okay, so this is where, okay, so now today's session was the global perspective on performance improvement. What we just discussed is performance improvement and the fundamentals of performance improvement. And please bear in mind, and that's not even the whole enchilada. There were 10 standards and we've just covered two. And so the field and the scope of study is massive. So now we're going to talk about global perspectives. Can you tell me what comes to mind when I say global perspectives on performance improvement? I'd love to hear some of your responses. Is there anything that comes to mind when one brings up global perspective on performance improvement? Standards, okay. Beyond the organization, okay. Climate change, okay. Cultural difference, exactly. Who said cultural difference? I'm sorry, I'm kind of not keeping up with the. Yes, cultural difference, Davina, excellent. International trade agreements, yes. Societal impact, quality assurance, they can all be, you can throw climate change, you can throw those things, those elements under world. So let me kind of give you how many heads does it take to be able to consult globally? David, I have no clue. I think my cheeky response to this is it could be n number of heads, and even those heads wouldn't be sufficient enough. Okay, so global perspectives. I want to kind of share my perspective to what I understand by when we talk about global perspectives and performance improvement. You can look at models. Okay, you can look at models that have been put forth by key thinkers and practitioners from the field of performance improvement. And we have one such model by Roger Kaufman, who talks about mega planning. Then we think about culture. You can also think about culture, and then you have another tool that has been proposed by Roger Addison, who's another great thinker of the field. And so culture is a huge, huge thing when you're thinking about global perspectives. And then, interestingly enough, you also know that when you kind of start getting knee deep into performance improvement and you start getting engaged in projects globally or cross culturally, you also find that there is a preference for certain kind of interventions. And so I am briefly just going to touch upon a study conducted by Vadivello and Klein. I think it was in 2011, and this was a study between US and South Asia to demonstrate the preference in performance improvement interventions. So when we're talking about global perspectives, these are the areas that I'm confining myself to. Climate change, trade regulations, those are trade regulations. I think someone mentioned trade regulations. Those are things that can come under business environment and conditions. Climate change, that is something that you can put under the world level, right? When we're talking about creating an impact. So I just want to clearly, quickly demarcate this for you. I'm sorry, I know this is a lot of information, and I'd be happy to stay over a little after 1:30 to kind of discuss anything that you'd like to. Okay, so I am quickly going to kind of go over global perspective. What I want you to, this is like a little caveat as we go through the presentation. A discussion on global perspective for performance improvement can once again get extremely layered. It becomes so because there's just so much of factors that need to be considered that even when you think you have all of it, there's always something missing. And it kind of goes back to the question that David raised: how many heads do you need to consult globally? And that was like no number of heads is ever enough. So um, mega planning by Roger Kaufman, he talks about looking at it in a mega way. And this talks about a very fundamental shift from individual performance improvement and organizational performance all of the stuff that we've just been discussing, to value addition to external clients and society. And he says that if you're not adding value to our shared society, what assurance do you have that you're not subtracting value from it? And that is one of the pinnacle, the fundamentals of how Roger Kaufman thinks about mega planning. And that is one of the global perspectives that you could have on performance improvement. And yes, there are shades of the world level that kicks in here as well. Um, so the mega planning model, like other performance improvement models, are have some of the systemic and alignment strengths. There are linkages, but what I'd like you to focus on are the two asterisk. The two bullets that have the star in front of them, and that is the key differentiator of Kaufman's mega planning model. And he says that you need to include objectives, not only of where you're going, but how will you know when you've arrived? But there also needs to be a justification on the basis of why you want to get there. And he says that all of this is about shared success. You need to be able to define it, to achieve it, and to prove it. And mind you that guys who've been thinking like that, of course, Roger Kaufman is one of the leading thinkers who thinks like this in the field of human performance technology, also known as performance improvement, that we've been referring to during this presentation today, during this webinar today. But there have also been other thinkers, and they are Senier and Prolad and so on. These are some of the tools that Roger Kaufman puts forth, and he says that these are questions that every organization must ask and answer. Again, another tool to kind of get into mega level strategic planning and strategic thinking. Please let us know if you want to have access to these tools, and I'll make sure that they're available to you. And then there is the global perspective on PI, and that is a huge discussion on culture. And a discussion on culture is extremely important. Studies have shown that culture or lack thereof is one of the main reasons why most businesses fail in innovation. I'm sure you're familiar with this very, very popular quote by Drucker, and it rings so true, because what does culture do to an organization? It delivers competitive differentiation. Think about Zappos and the business card company called Moo. Then what else does culture do for your organization? It can be used as an ultimate recruiting tool. Think about Facebook, think about Google, think about Amazon. And culture, believe it or not, can also have a significant impact on your future bottom line. And I'm going to just keep it very simple. What this means from a very simplistic standpoint is that people enjoy being around like minded individuals. Companies that have a clear and favorable work culture are able to better retain their employees because the staff enjoys who they work with. This is particularly important because the cost of replacing an employee can be twice, if not more, of their annual salary. Okay, so now I also want to say that this is once again this is a model that we've seen. It's a model called behavior engineering model by Thomas Gilbert. He did it in 1956. But like every model has its strength, and every model has its as Roger Addison says, that every model is right and every model is wrong. Now, if you're a person that believes in culture, a component that is missing from here is culture. So when you take a model to another culture, you need to be asking yourself, what about this model does not fit in here? And that'll give you the answer of the other aspects that you need to be digging into. We also looked at the performance system. And the way to look at performance system is you can do the same level of analysis, you can raise same level of questions, but think about the cultural context you're in. So there are different questions that you can ask yourself, and these are some of the questions that you ask as you get into different work cultures. How can you adapt your methods and behaviors for success in the work culture that you'll be operating in? And some of the fundamentals for a PI consultant is just these, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. You need to look at if there's someone with an experience in your team, the work culture that you're headed into, the time that's available for you to understand the work culture, the strategic and operational differences because of the differences in work culture. Um, Navigating some of the cultural myths and preconceived conceptions and biases. And you also, while you're doing all of this, you're raising all of these questions, you cannot forget that you need to be strategically and culturally also aligning yourself. This is yet another tool. Going back to my earlier offer, if this is something that interests you, send us a note and I'll be happy to send it to you. And then the last thing is interventions. Um, a global perspective on performance improvement. And this is a unique, this is another unique look at it. In this study that was done by Vadivello and Klein in 2011, they looked at how culture affected the use of performance improvement interventions, and they looked at US and South Asia, and I'm just giving you the top 5, and this is a top 5 from 25 different interventions. You will see that in number 2, performance appraisal and organizational communication happens to be a tie both for US and South Asia, and and in rank number 4, information systems and leadership development is a tie for the US. Now, so why is this important? Um, for those of you who are traveling globally, who've got clients from different parts of the world, you need to bear in mind that you need to keep a global perspective while you recommend your interventions. A good way to do that would be to conduct cost-benefit analysis before recommending the use of certain categories of interventions, and you do that by understanding the breadth and scope of the organization. You will also notice that organizations that are global tend to be more open to different interventions compared to local organizations. Another note is, when you start engaging in global projects, you might want to get insight into differences in academic expertise and specialized educational opportunities that lead to different trends across cultures. Now, what that means is, for those who know the history of the field, there is an emphasis of instructional design in the West. So you will see that there is more of performance improvement interventions that include instructional design. But then as you start getting into other cultures, you will notice that interventions take on a different flavor. Say, for instance, in South Asia, there's more of a preference of human resources, organization development, and other broader management disciplines. And so all of these trends and different expertise can impact the use and adoption of PI interventions. And so ultimately, you would also have to change your buy-in strategy for those interventions. Okay, so I think we are just about on time. Is there any question that comes to mind when we think about global perspective?
Ria,
Yes.
I'm going to jump in right now. Chat has been going a little crazy while you're talking, and I'll just say a couple of highlights. The first, number 1 question is all about the PowerPoint, and they would like access to it. So we'll give details of that at the very, very end. And also, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to access it. So that answers a bunch of questions. And also, I'm just going to read a couple of lines. They would be so organizations that do not want to change their authorization culture, they will disappear. I would argue that the 5th bullet.
I'm sorry, Davina, but I can't seem to hear you. Could you speak a little louder?
Sorry, how's this? I would argue that the 5th bullet should always be present, no matter the size of the question.
Davina, I cannot hear you. I don't know. Can you?
Okay. So I'll stop, but we've kept your question, and hopefully we'll address them at a later date. Ria, go for it.
Okay, so I'm sorry if you can send me a question. Okay, I'm going to focus on on David's question. So he has a question saying, "What is the profile of an HPT consultant, which seems should be able to do or at least understand everything he just described, assess everything, and design?" Mm. Oh, I'm sorry, Benoit. I'm so afraid of butchering names. I hope I'm saying it right. Um, hmm. Uh, Benoit, this is a question, and as an academic, which is my current role, I am going to be extremely biased. The role of an HPT consultant. There are many skill sets that an HPT consultant is required to have. You will find studies that say that an HPT needs to have a skill set anywhere ranging from 25 to 45 different competencies. Um, so it's huge. I believe that the more diverse your background is, you are better able, and this is where my bias is kicking in. The more diverse your background is, the better able you are to understand performance improvement issues, and you are able to suggest solutions, not necessarily design them. You're better able to suggest solutions that are not myopic or entertains your worldview. For instance, if I'm a marketing person and all of my background is in marketing, my approach to a performance deficiency or a gap in performance is going to be heavily marketing centric. Okay, so you need to be, when you're doing an analysis as an HPT consultant, you need to be completely neutral. And when you're designing a solution as an HPT consultant, or you're proposing a set of recommendations for your client as an HPT consultant, you need to be solution appropriate. Does that make sense? Yes, and that's what I meant. That sometimes it is, and it stems from your background, in my mind. It stems from the kind of work experiences and the projects that you've had at work. And then again, I mean, there are things, the kind of mentors you have, the kind of projects you get involved in, the kind of experiences that you have. It's never, unfortunately, there's never an easy solution to it. Where yes, you need to be a jack of all trades, Benoit, but you also need to be a no but you do need to be a master of some. And this kind of goes back, Benoit, please feel free to email me, because there are studies that have been done, and it's open for discussion and argument. They'll talk about, you need to know about 20, you need to have skill sets anywhere from 25 to 45 in 25 to 45 different areas, and I'd be happy to share some of those with you. Tool for affective skill. Kumar, am I reading this correct? Okay, for those who are interested in the I won't be able to share the ISPI um, PowerPoint presentation, but you do have the handouts. But if you want to take a look at the cultural presentation, which I apologize for rushing through, you could email me at ria.a.roy@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to share this cultural presentation with you. If you have questions around anything specific that we haven't had the time to answer, and you have to get out of this meeting because of conflicting priorities, email me and I'll be happy to answer. And for those who can stay back a few more minutes and have questions, I'm happy to stay back a few more minutes and answer some of your questions. Okay, Ravinder, that is too broad a question. Okay, so when you're talking about interventions for change of employees' behavior and setting expectations, First off, my first knee-jerk response to that is it's too broad. Okay, so you need to zero down what level within the organization are you looking at, which functional group are you looking at, employees behavior, is it an isolated case or is it an epidemic within that organization? Teachers, you have to ask teachers within which grade level. Is it all teachers, some teachers, science teachers, I don't know what level. High school, okay. Ravinder, we may want to discuss this offline. So send me a question and I'll give you. There's never you can. The unfortunate bit is improving performance. Just keep that in mind. Bear in mind that improving performance is never a linear process. It's dynamic, it's circular, and it's a heuristic. So every time you learn something new, you have to go back to the starting point. Okay, because conditions around the performance issue is always changing. So I want you to keep that in mind as you kind of think through the issues, because there are various levels, various stakeholders, and the variables keep changing. You need to understand motives of stakeholders and knowledge. Do you need to put a buy-in process in place, so on and so forth. It's never ending. So let's connect offline. You have my email ID. Are there other questions that someone would like to raise? Oh, thank you, Joanne. You're so welcome. Any questions, please let me know. I know we've kind of rushed through this presentation. Sarah, you're kind as always. Any questions, let me know. We've covered a lot of ground. Elizabeth, you're most welcome. Thank you, Roman. Thank you for all your time, energy, patience. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know how we can improve upon this presentation. Um, um, Benoit, I'm sorry for calling you David all throughout. Yes, I'll look forward to hearing from you. Ah, Rosa, you just opened a can of worms by saying that would you please recommend some literature on HPT? Do you know, you have to give me more guidelines because I can send you all the research on HPT. So you need to start giving me more of I'd be happy to share some literature with you, Rosa. What you need to tell me is what kind of literature are you looking for in HPT. There are some fundamental books on the field. I don't know if you are aware of the handbooks. In HPT, there are 3 handbooks. One was published in 1992, one was published in 1995, and the last handbook was published in 2006, I believe. And it is no longer, just a quick heads up, Rosa, it's no longer being referred to as HPT, although you're correct. Most of the literature is still calling it HPT. It's now slowly being referred to as performance improvement. Miriam, you're most welcome. Ravinder, thank you for your kind words. Francine, appreciated. You're most welcome. So Rosa, connect with me offline and let me know what you're expecting. Try and give me a little more sense of what kind of HPT literature you're looking for, because there's a whole lot of it. Okay, so are there any other questions? Ellie, you're most welcome. Thank you. Rosa, I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is Corey back. I think that's it for the questions. So just to conclude, first of all, Ria, that was fantastic. That was an excellent webinar, and your ability to facilitate in a webinar setting is absolutely masterful. That you were so interactive and gave everyone so much opportunity to participate. So thank you very much. I know some of you have to go, so I'll be real quick. And for those of you who are listening to the recording, I just want you to have a little bit more information about what's happening next Wednesday. So it will be our live panel discussion. So bringing these topics that Ria shared with us into the room in Montreal, among Montreal professionals, and how are we going to explore how these concepts are being applied in companies within Montreal. So that is Wednesday, the 24th of February at 6:30 The location is called Auberge Saint-Gabriel, and that's in Old Montreal. We have a phenomenal panel of professionals lined up for you. Very quickly, our moderator is Nathalie Doré. She has outstanding credentials and over 20 years experience in performance improvement and employee engagement at all levels. We have Richard Smith, who is one of our panelists. He is the professor and chair of education at Concordia University. Nicolas Bourgard is also on our panel. He is the head of people, performance, and development at IATA. We have Geneviève Guité, who is the chief talent officer at Thinking Capital. She has remarkable experience also in working with the Gen Y, the younger generation. And finally, we have Marc Lalande, who is the president of Learning Andrago, as well as the chair for the Montreal chapter of the Institute for Performance and Learning. So remarkable professionals, really best in class people coming to this panel who are going to share their ideas with you. And just to whet your appetite a little bit more, the topic of discussion is going to focus around how performance improvement shows up in organizations in Montreal, how leaders are aligning human performance improvement strategy to achieving corporate goals, how academia is preparing the next generation of performance improvement professionals, and what does industry need from performance improvement professionals right now. So it's going to be a remarkable conversation. I hope you're there. Please remember to register because seats are limited. And the link is going to be going out so that you can sign up and reserve your seat. There's also going to be a SurveyMonkey form coming around just so we can make sure we get everybody's feedback on today's event, as well as what you're looking for in future events so that the Montreal chapter of the ISPI can really address the specific needs of the individuals who want to take part. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Ria, amazing. Thank you, Davina, for being at Master Control. Thank you to Sonia DeMeo, who was the organizer behind this event, and we look very forward to seeing you on Wednesday, the 24th at 6:30, Auberge Saint-Gabriel, Montreal. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you, Kari. Davina, there's a question by Ellie, and she wants to know if she can pay and follow the next seminar online. I was wondering if we could, do we have a response for that?
That is a great question, and the answer right now is I don't know, but a great opportunity, so we'll figure out if it's logistically possible. But thank you so much for that idea.
Okay, so Ellie, I don't know if you heard Davina clearly. Could you just let us know if you're okay, great. Please follow back. Please follow up with us if you haven't heard back, and we'll try and see what can be done. Okay, thank you, Ellie. I appreciate your patience.
Okay. Well, I think we can sign off. Thank you, everybody, for being
Thank you,
with us.
Kari. I'm sorry I ran over time. Apologize.
No problem.
Thank you, guys. Have a smashing day ahead of you.
Smashing.